All right, I'm here with Justin Spann, who is the director for One Voice, the gospel choir here at Cedarville University, and he is the director of chapel worship and multicultural student development. Justin, how did you get into this job?
Really got opened the door. I started at Cedarville as a student in 2002, and I was in One Voice all throughout that time, and I also traveled with our touring team's Heart Song. And my senior year, the director, the guy who was kind of helping lead the choir, left Cedarville to pursue some other opportunities. And at that time, the school decided that they couldn't lose One Voice and what it brought to the university, and they decided to make it a part of Christian ministries and brought me in to direct the gospel choir and assist with our touring teams, which is what I started doing as assistant director. And then over the years, just working through the music with the touring teams and the choir and building up the choir from more of just being a gospel choir to also being a worship choir, more exposure in chapel. The decision was made to put me in charge of our chapel worship programming. And so I direct our choir, and then I also assemble our worship bands for chapel. We have chapel every day, so we have 6 or 7 bands that do worship, and then we have One Voice and other students who participate in chapel music, and so I just kind of facilitate our chapel schedule for worship. And then recently, within the last couple of years, we really had a push to just continue to grow in diversity. Our goal is to make our campus look like God's kingdom, and so I was asked to come in and help the university as they try to think through the different strategic plans for figuring out how we can make our campus reflect God's kingdom in that way, how we can encourage growth in diversity, how we can make our students that are already here and are of diverse multicultural, socioeconomic backgrounds, and even denominational backgrounds. Being a Christian university, we still have a lot of students from different backgrounds denominationally, to make them feel welcome and to recognize the unity that is in the body of Christ instead of the separation.
So what are some of the obstacles that you would face in a university that has historically been predominantly Anglo in trying to move it towards being at least more accepting of other ethnicities, embracing, and then what I saw in chapel today, which was a wonderful display of gospel music and black culture on display on the platform. And what are the obstacles that a university or any institution is going to face, even a church, in trying to move from a white DNA to a multicultural DNA?
Well, the hardest thing is just the whole idea of being a conservative. What it means to conserve something is to prevent change, really. I mean, we would never describe it that way. Yeah. But the idea behind conservatism is that we found a place that we like, and we're going to do everything that we can to keep it that way. And so the attitude that you come against is not a resistance to diversity as much as it is a resistance to change. Most of the people at Cedarville or at any institution like Cedarville, they love it. I love Cedarville. And so there's this fear of getting out of our comfort zone and making that decision. If we make this change, are we okay with the fact that our university or our church won't be what it once was? And that's the hardest part, actually. There's so much love and commitment, because of our history, there's a commitment to that history. And people are afraid that if we do this, or if we start to make chapel more diverse, or if we start to hire people from different backgrounds, is it going to damage the good thing that we have going? And it's a process, getting people to understand that you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, to use a cliche, but that bringing in diversity and making our administration and our faculty and our staff and our student body reflect God's kingdom more is only going to help us be more effective in engaging the world that surrounds us.
So you told me in the strategic plan for Cedarville, they actually have a diversity initiative.
Yes.
Where they're actually even funding recruiters that would go into diverse communities.
Yes.
They're putting money behind programs and things to help increase diversity.
Yes.
How important is it for an institution, whether it's a church or a college or a parachurch ministry, to put money behind it? I mean, how does that speak to you as an African American?
Well, I would say it's essential. What it really comes down to, and it's a biblical principle, the Bible says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And so a person can flatter you with their lips and saying that they're about diversity, but if they're not willing to put their treasures or their money towards it, it's a dead giveaway that their heart's not really in it as well. When people's hearts are committed to something, they're willing to put their money, their time, their efforts behind it. And we live in a culture that is very word-heavy. And there's a lot of talk going on. And as a person of color, and also as a person who's engaged with a lot of different multicultural groups, we all understand that and recognize it. But when you see the money or the time or the real effort being put toward it is when you realize that there's a true commitment. We all appreciate the conversation and the let's sit down and talk about this and brainstorm, but until people commit resources to making it happen, there's a noted, there's a differentiation between what they're committed to and what they just would like to see happen but aren't willing to work for.
What are some encouraging breakthroughs you've seen here at Cedarville on the diversity initiative?
Wow. Honestly, our strategic plan is one of them. The actual sitting down of administrators and saying, we're going to commit to this, we're going to put it on paper. Our strategic plan is available online, so it's not something that we're trying to hide and, if we don't hit the goal, nobody will know. It's something that we've made public. We're committed to doubling our student population of multicultural, that's also students of color and international students, from 7% to 14% by the year 2020. What's also encouraging about that is it's not just a commitment to try to diversify students, but that same commitment is for our faculty and our staff to double our population of multicultural faculty members and staff members by the year 2020. And with that strategic plan came the assignment of budget dollars, the creation of new positions. We have a associate vice president, academic vice president for multiculturals. They haven't finished the title actually, so I don't want to botch it up. But there's a new vice president position that's been created to help with the academic repurposing, trying to incorporate diversity into the curriculum, which is essential in a collegiate setting. But there have been other positions created, like you mentioned, in admissions for recruitment. My position with multicultural student development is a new position. We've got a dean position that's open now, but we hired a new dean for multicultural and international students to help to take the leadership of programming that's geared towards those students. And the list just goes on. Our alumni department is working really hard to start to reconnect and build bridges with our alumni of color. Because with the university like Cedarville that has been around, this is our 125th year, you can go back and see there are lots of students of color who have gone through the university and didn't have such a positive experience because we weren't sensitive to it 100 years ago, obviously. And so making the effort to reconnect with them and say, hey, we're changing and we want you to help us. How can we not only help you, but how can you connect us to students who could benefit from a Cedarville education? We have training for our administrators. The list goes on of things that we're really want to do. So.
How have you seen music with one voice facilitate the diversity conversation and maybe help it along? Do you think one voice contributes to a better attitude towards multiculturalism and what it brings to the table?
I think it definitely does. And maybe I'm biased because I'm a musician, but music is a tool, and it's a language in and of itself, and it's a language that crosses barriers. And so, we've even taken our One Voice Gospel Choir to Europe, and we don't even speak the language, but people were able to hear our message through our music. And so, having it in music brings a unity. As you know, our gospel choir is like over 95% white, but because the music, I feel like, breaks down the barriers within the choir. There's a community, there's a family mentality within our choir that raises that awareness. And our white Cedarville students who are in One Voice are more sensitive to multicultural issues because they have family, in One Voice who represent those people groups, and they can't stand to see them being marginalized. Or there's something about making that personal connection. And I think music is a great way to do that. Another way that you see success in that, and this is probably even an older way that you've seen schools do it, is through athletics. A lot of times schools like Cedarville, the only place you see diversity is on the sports teams. And some people would say that's due to stereotypes, but really it's because there's a camaraderie of being on a basketball team. You may not feel at home in the cafeteria, but when you're on the basketball court, color doesn't seem to matter as much. There's this family, we're a team, And so creating opportunities for both your majority and minority students to collaborate and develop a family dynamic breaks down so many barriers that just conversations can't.
Last question. What is when you think of the future of Cedarville and their heartbeat behind this, besides the statistics on the strategic plan, what would be a dream you have, very practical, that you say, if I saw this at Cedarville, it'd be huge?
Well, there's a lot of different schools of thought on that. What's the end goal? Is the end goal to have certain percentages or to have a certain amount of positions? Honestly, I think my dream is to see a campus where my position becomes unnecessary. And that almost sounds crazy, like why would you want to make yourself unnecessary? But a campus that is so diverse, and I'm not talking about colorblindness here at all because I recognize that is more of a hurdle than anything. But a campus that is so committed to diversity that doesn't take one position or one group of people to be pushing it, but it becomes the heartbeat for everyone in leadership, every faculty, staff member. because we want to engage the world.
Yeah.
And one of the things we wrestle with is being in Cedarville, which is in the middle of the cornfield in the Midwest. It's hard to sometimes even feel like you have the tools to engage because you have to go so far out to even get into what you would call inner city.
Right.
And so some people I feel are fortunate because they're surrounded by diversity. Their only issue is figuring out how to engage it. We have both of those issues where we don't really know how to engage it, and then once we learn, we're not really sure where to go to get it. But God has been really faithful in that, and so my dream would be to see Cedarville become a university where everyone of every socioeconomic background, denominational background, and multicultural ethnic background feels comfortable and feels not welcome as a guest, but as a part of the family.
Great. Thanks for your time, man.
Sure, no problem.